Down to the community and recreation budgets, Chris. So perhaps you want to walk us through how you want to manage your budgets and introduce your team at various times, and we can go through your budgets as they come along. So I assume you're starting, well, according to our list, it was going to be with libraries, but we'll leave that with you, and you may wish to handle it differently. I've just got, well, it's page 420, but I'll just wait to hear from Chris first.
If we can do the stadium management financial assistance report first, Paul is just going to turn up any minute, and then we can move on to libraries. I assume we're doing reports first.
Yes, well, we can, if you'd like to deal with it that way.
For each area.
Yeah, reports for each area, followed by the budget for each area. Yes. Would be ideal.
Okay, so just refresh us the report on, it's tab 13, item 411 in your Undiligent.
Yep.
Has everyone got that up? I'll just give them a couple of minutes.
Page 304 in your Diligent.
I use the tabs. Does everyone else use the tabs? Yeah. So. Okay, has everyone got on the right tab or the right page? All right, Chris, thank you.
So this report is seeking council approval for financial assistance to the North Canterbury Sport and Recreation Trust to assist in the establishment costs of operating the stadium. So we've been working with the Trust for quite some time on the Memorandum of Understanding which council has approved, which looks at currently a rent relief, essentially a staged rent provided to the council over 3 years, starting at 50%, then 75%, then the full after 3 years, and that gives them a bleed-in period essentially to get the building up and running. The Trust approached us and said, while that's really good, and they really like that approach, they do have some upfront costs which they're going to need to cover to actually operate the building. So at the moment they're out recruiting an HR manager and also a manager for the actual building itself. In April we start with the training of someone from North Canterbury Sport and Recreation Trust on how to actually operate the building. They need to be able to turn the lights on when they walk in on day one. We can't just hand them the keys. So to employ someone, they obviously have an upfront cost, and that's going to start around April this year. The Trust came to us originally and said they wanted around $130,000. This report suggests that we give them rent relief, a further rent relief in that first year of $60,000. The reason for the change between 60 and 130 that the Trust actually requires and will likely have to cover is that we would like to offer the 60 and then the Trust is going to cash flow the rest. They're going to come back after the first year and obviously, as they are meant to in their Memorandum of Understanding, show us their books. If they're doing really well, they may be able to cover it. If they're not doing really well, then they may have to come back and ask for further assistance to cover that upfront cost that they're going to have to pay now. We didn't want to give them all of it upfront, just in case they're doing really well and they can cover it themselves. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions? Okay. Well, there's a recommendation. Councillor Redmond, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I take it, Chris, that you think it's better to give them a rent reduction rather than the grant for that amount?
Yeah, there's a number of options within the report and it discusses those options. We did talk to the Trust about the rent relief or potentially giving them a grant or reducing the $1 million capital contribution that they have, or paying for it out of our, or paying for the grant out of our contingency. We don't think there'll be contingency left at this stage. However, there might be. That depends. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, really, as to exactly how they end up getting the $60,000. They were happy with the rent relief, which is direct income for them because they don't have to pay that to us or the grant. So they'd be happy with each option.
Okay, Councillor Williams, you have a question?
Yeah, originally when the deal was getting done, they were talking about the fundraising and what they were going to sell, some of their assets to help cover this. And I noticed some of their assets they had actually told us they were going to sell they haven't even bothered to try to sell.
No, that's not correct.
Rest cover.
That's not correct.
So if you're referring to East Belt,
Yeah, I am.
they're currently
No, sorry, I'm referring to Edward Street.
Edward Street.
Yeah.
That was what I was referring to too, even though I said
Yeah.
the other one. We all knew what
we knew what
about.
you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. They do actually, they are going through that process at the moment. So I had a meeting with ice trampolining yesterday or the day before, and ice trampolining and gymnastics are going through a process at the moment to hopefully merge together, which is really a good outcome. And they still have the offer of purchasing that. So I was talking to them yesterday around how they were potentially going to fund that. In terms of the purchase, they've got a time frame that the trust has given them to come up with a sale and purchase agreement. If they don't come up with a sale and purchase agreement, then the trust is going to put that on the open market.
So if that gets on the open market, this amount will get refunded to the council, is that correct?
No.
No?
No, it doesn't. The trust still need to fund their fit out, and they need to fund the $1 million that they're going to look to provide us. So the trust at the moment has been successful in obtaining $500,000 from lotteries, $300,000 from Rata. I do believe that they've sold their gold fundraising, and then now they're looking for silver and bronze. So they are doing all right with their fundraising, but they need that money themselves to operate. They need that money for staff and for their own fit out as well. So this is over and above.
And Chris, you might just want to, perhaps that they've got a naming rights sponsor which has been agreed,
Yes.
and for a number of, in some of the courts as well. Are you aware of what the
Yeah, so
detail around that is?
So the naming, I'm not 100% sure on the figures, but yeah, they've got the naming rights sponsor, and then they've actually got the court sponsorship as well.
That's enough debate on this topic.
Send everybody to sleep.
Yeah, it's actually a natural cooling way of the building. So yes. All right. Further questions, Councillor Barnett?
Chris, just wondering, do you have an opening date for the stadium? Is it on time, and what part in 21-22 is it opening?
It should be open in August, I believe. It's on track. I went and had a visit last week. All the flooring is on site, and all the jibbing of the walls and things is all done, so it actually looks quite good now. The one thing which we're waiting on is the rubber flooring inside the gym room. So that's the one thing which is coming from Spain at the moment. And if worst case scenario, it doesn't come and we open the whole building, and the gym part, which is the trust part, is delayed slightly, but the actual forecourts and all the other auxiliary buildings will all be finished and ready to open. So,
Cool.
so
even if August slid into September, so that's 3 months of the year that hasn't been able to be used. So technically, that would be about 75% of the rental, which would be 75,000 anyway. So would we normally give a partial rental if people can't use the building that's not open?
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, we are giving rental relief for that first year to reflect the fact that on day one they're not likely to have it full, and you're right, on day one of the financial year it won't even be open.
Won't even be open. Thank you.
Councillor Atkinson, followed by Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chris, and notwithstanding what you've just said about the opening dates and things, why was this cost not identified before now? How do we get it now, and it's this amount of money, and it wasn't identified before? Because we must have known that the building was going to be opening, was going to have a period where it's going to take a long time to build up and all those things. Why was it not identified?
Oh, look, I think it's been a complete oversight, to be fair. The trust has approached us and said, look, with the current financial arrangements that we've got, we need to start bleeding money in terms of getting staff in to actually start operating the building, and we don't have an income from the building, so what are we going to do about it? And they said, look, we've got a number of options we'd like to explore with the council in terms of rent relief or grants to get us up and running. So that's how this report came about. We, not being fully understanding of the way in which the trust was going to operate the building, this didn't spring up for Craig or myself, and it was something that the trust came to us and said, look, we've now got our contracts ready to go and start a recruitment process to employ someone early. How are we going to pay for that, and how are we going to cover it? So
are we satisfied then that going forward that the right plans are in place and that they do actually know how to do those things?
As staff, we are. They do have experience in doing this, obviously with their Edward Street building. They are doing the right thing in terms of making sure that they are employing the right people in terms of a manager for the building, but also that HR support as well to make sure that their contracts are right. We know that they've already been getting contracts drawn up for the likes of the health services part of the building as well. So they're actually doing quite a lot at the moment using their existing staff. So we're confident. They've already spoken to the likes of football and basketball and netball, and already pretty much locked them in terms of how they want to use the building, when they want to use the building. So they've done a lot of work already, so we're pretty confident they'll be able to run it successfully.
Councillor Ward.
Would it be, me put the question right, given that the contractors are on time and they've been very, very good, is it not reasonable to expect that everything will be done on time and that we're looking forward to the opening function in late August for business awards?
That I cannot guarantee, but would be wonderful.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor, yes.
So are there going to be any other surprises expected compared to the original deal from them running this stadium?
Look, had I known that this was going to be something for consideration, it would have been here a lot earlier, so I can't crystal ball gaze on what might come forward, but we've been in constant contact with the Trust on a daily basis around fit out of the building, around changes to the building, around their operation. We're pretty confident it won't be, but what we've done in this report is we haven't given them the 130 that they've asked for, to reflect the fact that we don't know how this building is actually going to, how successful it's going to be. We know that there's a lot of people who want to rent it at the moment, and we think it's going to be really successful. So we said, look, let's just give you the 60 now, then you can come with your books, open your books to us next year, and if you are doing really, really well, better than expected, then don't expect us to give you more money to cover those costs. So we're doing it slowly, so that we can be very aware and open-eyed going into the next year.
Potentially it could be an ongoing thing.
I'm pretty confident that it will be the other way, and that we won't have to give more.
Okay.
The reality is, until this has probably been running for 18 months, 2 years, will we actually know where it's actually settled and landing and how the Trust are doing it. The conversation all the way through is there's an element of unknown in this. They are the best operators of the venue by a long shot, and in terms of the options we had in front of them, and we're going to need to work with them to ensure that whatever is the outcome is fair to both, and I think that should be the basis on which we're thinking about how the facility operates in a manner that we want them to run it to the best of their ability to maximise their utilisation and occupancy. We want them to be successful in their own business. We don't want to be cross-subsidising their business unnecessarily, but we do need to be fair in the arrangements, and I think that should be how we think about it over the next 18 months as they get to learn what the facility's potential is, and we get to understand how successful or otherwise they are and we are in the delivery of the anticipated service.
Thank you. So we come to a recommendation. You're going to move, Councillor Doody, and are you indicating you wish to second, Councillor Ward? You'd like to speak, obviously, Councillor Edmund. That's all right. All right. Well, we'll see if you still wish to speak soon. Councillor Doody.
Thank you. This is a very important part of getting the Trust up and running to run this business successfully. The Trust has a lot of professional people on their board. They're certainly really proactive and forward-thinking. They haven't come to us lightly with this. That's been something that they've worked through. They've done a lot of work on their putting this together, working out exactly what needs to be done. They've taken ownership of this stadium and everything else to go with it. They want to make sure that it is a top-notch performing stadium, and to fit all the the sports and the gym and all that in on it. It's been a lot of work involved with that. They've got a full complement for most days, I think, of the week for sporting that wants to be part of it. So and it's most important that whoever they put in there, that the staff are highly competent on how this building is going to run, and it's very important for us as councillors and for them as the running of it, that it goes very smoothly. So this is why I am recommending this, that council helps with the 60,000 towards the cost of starting this stadium up and running.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you. Yes, really want to support this option too. To give them support to get underway. I know they're highly competent, and I know that this is going to be very, very successful and a great asset to the community. So I thoroughly support this to a hand up, and I'm sure that that we won't be asked to do too many, because I know it's going to be very successful.
Councillor, so I've got speaking list, Councillor Redmond, myself, and Councillor Williams. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the recommendation. This is a very well-run organisation, and Councillor Doody and myself are your representatives on that trust. So I'm very much in favour of supporting them. It's rather ironic because initially I was not a supporter of the stadium in terms of its timing. So anyhow, I'm now an enthusiastic fan, and I think we really need to do all we can to help the trust. They work very closely with the council, so they're not a loose unit running around out there. So I'm very supportive of their request.
Thank you, and I'm going to support the request today too. When they first came to the table and we were talking about the lease, we did actually say we didn't want to set them up to fail. So that was the conversation we had in the early stages. And around the amounts of money that we set aside as a lease agreement, that was the sums that we agreed to. But there is a lag period. That this organisation also has been affected by COVID too, so they have been in a situation where they've had loss of income, and I'm confident that they are the right organisation to be running this facility. They've already raised over $1 million. The issue with trampoline and down there is it actually has taken some time in which to get to a point where they can have that conversation, and that those organisations are in the place in which to get space to consider whether or not they wish to take over that building or indeed buy it. And the trust didn't want to get on, because of the nature of what they do, didn't want to get ahead of themselves and sell. They could have easily sold the building and could do fairly well in the current market, but actually is that advancing sport in the area in general? And it's not. It's better to work with those organisations to see if a win-win can be achieved, in the trust under leadership of Don Robertson, who I think we're very lucky to have in that space, with his business and commercial acumen, brings a real rigour there. And I go along to the working party meetings as well, and I'm impressed with Don and the work that he's doing, remembering that he's also a volunteer, and most of those that are there, all the trustees that are there actually are volunteers, and there's a huge voluntary aspect. There is paid staff that work through the gyms and the other programs that the trust put on, but remembering that we're a settler of this, it's an organisation that we're involved with two trustees. They're coming to us with a realistic proposal, and I think, Chris, going forward, I expected this reaction today, and rightly so, from colleagues, that it's probably a fairly hard conversation back to the trust, that we're not really expecting this to come back again, really. But I don't necessarily want to set them up to fail either, but with the forward bookings that they've got, confident from what I'm told that they will be able to manage this well. In fact, the fundraising is going better than expected, and they've brought in place Carolyn Whitaker, very impressive. And those of us that were at the naming rights opening that day could see the level and calibre of interest that they had there of businesses and the and broadly who were right behind it. So once they get, and it's taken them some time to get that right, now they've got that model right. They've sold, as Chris said, they've sold all the gold. They're now looking at silver and bronze and the other levels. So there'll be opportunities for each of us should we wish to make contributions. I'm considering doing one myself to assist, because I think that that's something that those of us who have supported the building of the stadium over the years, I certainly want to see it succeed. So supporting this today is just I think just a short-term matter. I don't think the trust we will see, but I doubt that they'll be back here again, because it'll be up and running and the model will prove itself to be successful. So I urge you to support the recommendation. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I also will be supporting this because it's very important that the trust actually survives and is vibrant. I'm just a wee bit disappointed that they have come back so soon wanting a bit of a handout to get things rolling and what they hadn't envisaged, but it's going to be really good for the community long term, so I think we've just got to support it, and I also hope they don't come back for more and wanting the ratepayers for a top up.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, it's always really good to look back in hindsight and say, oh, we should have done that. And, you know, that's something perhaps that we should have done. But hey, it's happened and now we've got this situation. Having the trust for us is a huge advantage. It would cost us way more to run it ourselves. So we're actually saving the ratepayer money by having a voluntary trust helping to run this wonderful facility. I noted that they're only going to have it for 3/4 of the year, so it would have only been a $75,000 rent anyway, so it's not even the full amount that they're being asked for today. And we have given rent relief on other council buildings during the COVID period, so I see no problem in giving them the sum today to help them get up and running, and I wish them all the best.
Thank you. Further speakers? Right, reply, Councillor Doody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really do ask you all to support this. I've only just got to look at Don Robertson and how he runs everything, and he's so proactive. The whole team, the whole board is so proactive, and they want to see the best. And quite frankly, you've only got to look at how the new Southbrook gym is going, and just how efficiently it is run, and that's exactly how our gymnasium and our stadium will be, and also when they get their new facility up and running for sports people to train in there at this very high level. It's going to be a real asset for our whole district. So I urge you all to support this. Thank you.
Okay, with that I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? I declare that carried. Do you want that recorded? All right, Chris, thank you. Libraries now. So, welcome to the table. So they're in our white pages. First, so we've got in our pages. It's page 420, but we're going to cover the supplementary agenda item, which was the Ringara Civic Precinct matter first. So that's the paper on. So you need to go into your diligent, and it's in the supplementary agenda. Sorry? Has it been put in as item 14? Sorry? Do you want to deal with the report first, or?
Yeah, I will do the report first.
So that's in.
Budget is essentially dealt with that item.
So that's in the supplementary agenda. So have everyone got that?
So you've got to
Go back out and diligent. There was a couple of copies of it floating around here yesterday, actually. So just give members a minute to bring that up. Yes, we're dealing with the civic, Rangiora Civic Precinct first, 1.1. So that's, and there's a report on diligence. Has everyone got that up? Okay, so Chris and Jeff.
Yeah, I think Jeff's going to lead off the civic precinct.
Okay. So just a reminder, the original civic precinct was sitting in year 11 when we did the last LTP in 2018. So effectively it's still sitting in year 11, but now becomes year 8, 3 years on. The reason for this report is to just confirm that the rationale for coupling the library with that civic centre is still intact and part of that strategy. So, and the reason for not bringing that back, and forward, as we were going to do, is that there's a number of things that central government is still deciding on. That's the main one is 3 waters. You also have the resource consenting, and in addition to that, is with those 2 activities going, there could even be a rejiggle of local authorities as it stands today. So not an ideal situation, but coupling these 2 projects, as we found out when we did the preliminary estimations, does provide substantial savings and efficiencies when you look at the operations of an organisation going forward in a building that's going to last 50 years plus. It also provided a good relationship with the Rangiora Town Centre strategy. So it's just putting this back in front of the council just to check whether our strategies are right with the environment that exists at the moment. And I think Chris is going to just talk about the sort of the activities and the way in which that could be accommodated for the next few years to allow it to happen, so that the levels of service that we're providing through the library to the community is being looked after.
Thanks, Jeff. So we do have a library-specific report which we can do after this, and the library-specific report and some of the items which are identified in the library budget have been put in there to bridge the gap, essentially. We've got a number of items which look to modify the Rangiora Trevor Inch Memorial Library at the moment to allow more space for library services to be more modern in the way that we deliver those to our communities. The levels of service around library provision suggest that we actually need the library space now. We've needed more library space in Rangiora for a number of years already. We're aware of that. As Jeff has said, coupling it with the civic precinct building, if you're a pure library supporter, 100%, it's not the best deal. However, when you look at it from a council perspective, a ratepayer perspective, and if you look at it long term and what the outcome is going to be for our community, it is something which I think should be supported. The costs in building one building are lower, and there are some synergies between doing that, and it also uses the civic precinct in a far better way to get a better outcome for the community. But it does obviously delay what is currently a level of service need that we have. So the rest of the library's budget, Paul has done an amazing job of looking at ways we can use the existing space, modify that space, use technologies to be able to bridge the gap between the service that we have now and the service we know we should be providing to our community. So we're in support of the recommendations in this report.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Barnett?
2 questions. What percentage of the district use the Rangiora Library? It used to be 65%, but has that changed?
I don't know if we have those figures off the top of our head. What we can say is that we do have a target of people through the door, and that target has to beat the previous year's target, and we've always been able to achieve that target. So the numbers are 550, 600,000 through the door a year, and that seems to grow with population. So I would imagine the ratio is probably about the same, being that people through the door is growing at the same rate as people in the district. We also have a remarkably high amount of people that actually take out books from our library, more so than some other parts of the district, which probably reflects the demographic we have.
Second question is, the library got pushed out because of the earthquake and we had to focus resources everywhere else. The civic precinct's been pushed out by COVID and other factors, and now so there's always going to be something come up, and I have concerns the civic precinct will actually never happen. In that situation, couldn't there be some sort of stage 1 planning for expansion of the Rangiora Library earlier, but due to the fact that it is just not meeting level of service?
I think if local government changes to a point where the civic precinct extensions would significantly have to change, the number of staff and the organisation is a lot lower, none of that really changes the need for the library to extend. I think at that point, once those sorts of things are a little bit more certain, we can continue to work with the architect that we already have been working on modifying the way in which the staff accommodation was extended or not extended, but then look at the library extension being the primary project there. So the focus of the project at the moment is on both. That's once we know more about Three Waters, more about local government going forward, we're going to be able to move with that, which could end up being the library being the main focus and an extension solely just being the library extension. But at the moment, it's just a little bit too early. And what we don't want to do is do a huge amount of costly planning and then potential building and get a result which is not going to be long-term 50 years. So.
But given that the next long-term plan is not until 2024, and this is pushing it out to 2027, wouldn't it be wiser to leave that budget placeholder in a little bit earlier until we know more, which is likely to be in the next 12 to 18 months?
At the moment, we've combined the two budgets. If council would like us to look to bring the library back, we could do that. I just don't think we're going to be in a position, we may be in a position
25, 26.
in the next long-term plan to make a decision. At the next long-term plan, we have the option of pulling that money back if we know more.
I think, just further to that, I think it depends how reform proposals progress through Parliament, because I think that's ultimately going to be where they will be progressed. We may be back doing either a significant amendment to or a new LTP well in front of 3 years, and so I think the issues that could be in front of us may be sufficiently significant to warrant new LTPs, which could see many elements of the council's business and program subject to further review.
But so, Mr. Palmer, why wouldn't we just leave the budget provisions as they are now until we have that information?
Because I think we are still wanting to do, the current position. Well, you could argue the budget provision is where it is now. It was in year 11, it's now in year 8. But the thought that doing both projects together is still the most sensible thing to do for the combined complex. If we do bring it forward, then two things will be a consequence of that to bring that, because I think you would bring both, if you were minded to, you'd bring both projects forward in the budget provision, which will see both a rate implication and a debt implication for the council, which, Jeff, I'm not sure if you're able to comment on.
It takes things to quite close to the limit. I think when the working party were looking through this, and that's why that working party effectively ceased at that point of time, is that it's not just the library and civic centre, it's how that actually works in with the town centre strategy and how it promotes the township. And until you actually know what that scope of the building and size looks like, and how the library would be incorporated into that space and get the efficiencies all working, it's very difficult to actually build a building like that, which you could build a building and then with the foresight of saying, well, if it doesn't happen, this extra space could be commercial. But even doing that, there's a huge amount of risk that you're putting into that type of build, and highly risky that you get it wrong, because it might not be what the business wants to operate from. So until that decision's made, we could quickly get that project team together again and get something moving, but too much risk with indecisions coming through from central government at the moment.
Okay, any further questions? So we have a recommendation. I'll move. Seconded, Councillor Ward. There's been, as our staff have mentioned, a lot of thinking going behind this. There's been some initial work prepared. It's all around what is, I guess what she's talked about is being responsible and prudent, but also looking at the climate we're in, where it's been signalled by government there's a lot of potential change coming, and we know that in the three water space that's certainly government's very firm desire. So in terms of bill, I do think it makes sense to have, and it is considered as one, because there are cost efficiencies that can be achieved. The other thing I'd like to consider, and this is not just about the library, but we're also talking about museum as well. So it is a genuine precinct, and look at car parking potential as well. In fact, some of the designs that the architects had come up with had some fairly creative solutions. It just became clear that when we're looking at costings, it's going to be significantly more than is even indicated here. And we don't know that until that's properly looked at. And at the moment, I don't think that's the right time to be signalling, personally, to the community that we're looking at that level of expenditure. When our community is particularly hurting with COVID, there are a lot of people that have either lost their jobs or under reduced hours. There's a whole degree of uncertainty, and I pick that up every day when I'm out and about, and I'm sure others of you do as well. So it's about being prudent, and us also looking at the appropriate timing, knowing what the size of our business is looking like. And as we said, we're likely to be facing an earlier long-term plan revision than we otherwise anticipated. If things change, we can look at this at any time, and we can pull this forward if we feel that that's right, or we can look at staging, and we could look at adding to the library at that point. As is mentioned, that it's the right thing to do is to look at the complete complex. I appreciate, look, I'd love ideally to be doing the whole thing and getting it done once and for all. It's very low environment for interest as well at the moment, but you're taking on debt, you've still got to pay it back. And at the present time, we've got Standard & Poor's looking at where our debt's sitting, and I think that would really, would impact our debt profile and potentially our ratings. So, and there are things that are important to us, but we've also got to provide for the future of our community. I think our community would be thankful to us in delaying this at this time. We have looked at our current building, and we are spending the minimum that we need to, and upgrading the heating and ventilation and making it a better environment for our staff, as well as leasing renting other premises in the town to alleviate some of those pressures. Not ideal, but it's also helping out those building owners as well. Some of them had vacant premises, so it's overall helping our local economy as well. So not ideal, but at the present time I think it's about presenting a responsible and prudent position. And when we know more, and when we see where our economy's at, then we can make some further decisions at a later stage. But at the moment, signalling what we do, I think, is the responsible and prudent position. Councillor Ward.
Thank you. I will reluctantly approve this recommendation with the proviso that we revisit once the impact of Three Waters on staffing is known. I've done quite a bit of research, and I'm quite passionate, a bit like Councillor Barnett, that we move forward in the future of a library civic precinct facility for Rangiora, the hub of Waimakariri. So I do understand that we're in an unusual situation where we're uncertain of the future with our staffing requirements, and so I do see that we need to wait and see what happens in perhaps the next 18 months. I'd just like to some of the homework that I've done at present, staff are spread all over the town, and I'm quite concerned about this. This is very much less efficient and costly, both in expenses, rentals and costs alone. With the long-term decision to extend to expire Rangiora Farmers Building, which accommodates roading planning alone, a large number of staff, there's quite a large cost here, which could go against repayment of some of the overheads. The initial plans that we were involved in are to incorporate the library extension, office administration, community accommodation and museum in an inviting one-stop experience with perhaps retail continuation on High Street and green courtyard spaces facing onto Percival Street, with that being the main entrance for all facilities, still allowing car parking west and south of the buildings and entrance connecting through to Victoria Park. The final square metres could be determined when we have the final confirmation of the impact of the Three Waters review. The library extension is long overdue and must be, in my opinion, a priority for the district before we ad hoc spend monies on smaller projects which could fragment the service. Rangiora is the central hub of the district and needs upgrading as a priority. To bring the museum into the mix would allow for central accommodation and interest, and we could expand the art gallery. With a growing senior population, more retirement villages in the district, a central hub for most facilities would be ideal. So I think that roading is a large commitment around 28, 29, 30. Schoolbridge is not only in my view, and the Eastern Bypass should be a priority as well. So we've got a lot of expense further out as well. But anyhow, I will recommend this recommendation so that we can be prudent and that we can wait until we see the impact of Three Waters and other things out of our control with staffing. But I also would like to say that I think we should fight to keep our staff in these changes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't disagree with what Councillor Waters said. However, the time is not right. We've never been more certain about the uncertainty in local government. And we know there will be change. It's going to happen. Forewarned is forearmed. And we need to be, right at this time, more than ever, pretty careful about the capital expenses that we commit to our district. Yes, money's cheap, and I'll hear those arguments, you know. I've already heard them this morning from a councillor, where a statement made by our CEO yesterday means we should spend all sorts of money and just do it now and make sure that we get on with it because money's cheap. Well, we still have a responsibility to people to be able to have the affordability of this, of where they live. And the affordability is important, and rates is in one of those categories. We will hear as soon as this goes out that if we put the projections that were up yesterday, so I stand to be corrected, but I think 23% over the next 10 years will be the rate rise. You know, over time. I think it added up. Jeff's better at that than me. Deals with numbers every day, but it was around that figure. So we're going to hear all that. If we're not responsible with what we're going to do here, and there will be some ups and downs, some things we don't like and some things we do like, but I have full sympathy with a growing community in the library that needs to be extended, but the one picture is actually is the right thing to do. Have a look at what we did in Kaipoi after the earthquake, and just about everybody I speak to talks about how great that facility is, with a collective of things in it: the library, the service centre, all of those things, the meeting rooms. People talk about how good for the community and for our district that is. We need to do this once, do it right. We don't have the ability to go out and get a $30 million loan on the top of the capex that we're already doing right at the moment to get this stuff done. We can do that if you want to, but Standard & Poor's will be looking at us and going, yep, we told you, so here goes your rating. It's just not prudent to do that. And right at the moment with COVID as well, now, I mean, I can argue, I've been sitting around this table for nearly 20 years. Robbie's been here for over 20 years. You know, every year there's a crisis. It's just the level of the crisis and what you have to pay, what attention you have to pay to that crisis. I've never lived in a country in my life. I'm 60 years old next week. I've never lived in a country in my life. In fact, I've only ever lived in this one. I've never lived in one where all of a sudden everything's shut down. That has never happened. It is, here goes that word, unprecedented in the life of most of the people that sit around this table and most of the people in the district. Wartime was the last time they shut countries down. You know, we have to be prudent with what we're doing and be sensible, because I also, to counter that, I do not want to live in a district that stands still. And I do not want to stop the growth because people can't afford to come here. So it's a big balancing act, and unfortunately, this is one of those balancing acts that just has to be pushed out a bit further to make sure we've got it right and that we're doing things right. But for me, the one project after what we did in Kaipoi after the earthquake, for me, is actually something that is really, really relevant to this whole exercise. And it does involve our staff. But I just remind you, we have never been more certain about the uncertainty of local government.
I'm quite uncomfortable with this recommendation because I want to vote for part of it and I want to vote against part of it, which makes it very, very difficult. I want to vote for the office accommodation being scheduled for 2028. We cannot do that earlier, and it is too uncertain, and I totally agree with all the arguments that have been put forward by other people. But I do not agree with deferring the placeholder budget, which is only a placeholder budget of $7 million, from 2024 to 2028 for the Rangiora Library extension. And I voted against pushing it out way back 2 terms ago when we voted on the Kaipoi Library. The reason was that even when I started in 2010, the Rangiora Library was bursting at the seams. Now that was 10 years ago. Now we had an earthquake and we had to fix all the things that were broken. There was no choice about that. But we spent $26 million doing that, and it wasn't the right time, but we had to. We had to do it for our people. And as Councillor Atkinson has rightly said, the library has become a hub. It's become the most important place for people to meet, for people to get information. It's critical for a growing town centre to have that facility. Rangiora Library is a dog. And I don't say that, and it's not any reflection on staff. It's a historic building that is no longer fit for purpose. And I am uncomfortable with coupling the civic centre with the library upgrade. I'm very uncomfortable about that. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is that building accommodation for council staff is always wildly unpopular. It's politically suicide to put up a new building for council staff, even though we desperately need it in our outmoded building. This is always going to be a political football, and it's going to come up at every election, it's going to come up at every long-term plan, it's going to come up at every annual plan. Why are you spending money on a council building? That is always going to be difficult to get through, and in this environment it's going to be impossible to get through with the uncertainties we're facing. But the library is a core council function, and we are not meeting level of service. We are failing the people of Rangiora and the surrounding district by having a library that is not fit for purpose. It does its best with the facilities it's got, and we still like going there, but it's not fit for purpose for a district that's going to be reaching 100,000 people in the next 20 years. And if we defer it again, like we deferred it with the earthquakes, we defer it again, that placeholder budget, we can't even get the project started. Now, when you do big projects, you stage them. And it's quite normal to stage. If we're doing a civic precinct, which is a lovely aspiration, and I love Councillor Wood's vision, although I don't actually agree with the timing of it. If we're doing a civic precinct, you stage it. First stage for this has to be the library. And I do not agree with pushing that budget out at the moment. We've talked about COVID. People are going to need the library and community facilities to get through COVID. They're going to need a place they can gather and meet. You cannot meet in the Rangiora Library. We can push all the shelves around and that will help, but we cannot have a decent meeting or function in the Rangiora Library. You can in Kaipoi, you can't in Rangiora. People are looking for jobs. People are using the internet there. People go there to connect. They go there to learn new skills. They go there to meet their GPs. It's not just about books. It is a community hub. And if we fail our community by not having a fit-for-purpose community hub in the largest town in our district, then we are failing them as elected members. So I cannot vote for pushing out the library extension. I think the two projects need to be decoupled, because I don't think we're going to get the civic precinct through anytime soon with the level of debt and the level of uncertainty we've got. But the library is essential. The library needs to be done. And the time is always going to be the wrong time to spend capital money. We said that about the sports centre, and yet this council voted for it. The library is just as critical for those who don't play sport. It's for those of us who need somewhere to gather, to connect, to be people. It's for community development. So I really respect what everyone has said, and I respect the work that's been done in this area. But personally, I don't believe the civic precinct will happen. And personally, well, certainly not in the next 10, 20 years. And personally, I don't believe that we should be coupling the library project to stall this project that is well overdue and doing a disservice to the ratepayers of Waimakariri.
Thank you. I just take you back not too many years ago when around this table the council chose to just do for the Oxford Library and Service Centre just to do not a full build, a new build, but just to replace what needed to be replaced, only to find that they ended up having to do a full build because of the problems associated with it. That full build for the Oxford Library Service Centre has been nothing but an absolute asset for our whole area, for the Oxford community and beyond. And it is a meeting place. It can be used for all sorts of things. There's lots of children go in there that have special meetings. You've got the homeschool children going in. It is absolutely imperative that this library is built and be built for purpose. And so I, like Councillor Barnett, again, I'm actually, yeah, well, I want to call you Councillor Kirsten. I really would like to see this library get going and go ahead. Bring the museum in on it, because that's really important, because the museum is not fit for purpose anymore. And I really would like us just to have a bit of pride in this particular area for those reasons. And this is why I will be voting very much for the service centre at library coupled with a museum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's logical to align budgets for both the library and the civic centre. We need a comprehensive design, and in my view, I agree with other colleagues that it should also include the museum. I don't agree to a staged program until we know more about what we're going to end up with. I don't favour a piecemeal approach. I see it as a comprehensive development, including the three elements of the library, the civic centre and the museum. Councillor Ward, when I had a talk to her the other day, referred to it as a one-stop shop. So I would like to see that happen. The only issue we have is one of timing. Councillor Ward would like to see it sooner, and in terms of the library, so would Councillor Barnett. But I think we do have to be prudent, and I see these still really as placeholder points in the budget. There are too many uncertainties to make a commitment to this project, and I really want to see them both go together rather than be dealt with separately. We also will shortly be discussing measures to help the library in the interim, and I think that goes a long way to addressing some of the concerns that Councillor Barnett has pointed out. in a perfect world, yes, it would be great to have a new library, but unfortunately we're in the real world, we do have budget constraints, and I think we have to be prudent. But at the end of the day, I think it's very desirable that these projects be treated together. The only issue that will come up for debate, and we can look at this in future years, is the timing. And at the moment, the timing is not right. Thank you.
Backed it off. Thank you. I'll just restart. Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'm not denying that this is ideal, and look, and as we've all talked about, in an ideal world, yes, you would get on and do these things straight away, and the consultation within the environment, and as soon as we see as practical, but in the environment we're in, we've all talked of COVID and the uncertainty in local government particularly. The consultation document will ask our community its view, and so we'll listen to what this goes out with referred position, but ideally we're always guided by our community, and let's listen to what they've got to say. But there is an element of this where we need to go out and show our community that we're showing some leadership in that space and what our preferred position is, and in taking into account all the information we know. But it'll be part of that, and we'll hear from there. But I think it was I heard Councillor Barnett refer to before that the library's a dog. I think it's a very unfortunate word, because actually it's not. Everyone I talk to in our community always talks about what a fantastic facility we have. Yes, it's perhaps reaching its constraints, and we know that, but look, Paula, you and your team do an outstanding job. You really do. And I know that our community highly value that facility, and all the volunteers that go along and support that. We go to the volunteer functions every year, and they're always full of such pride for that facility. And we address the heating through our last budget. I hope that's working better in this, particularly in this environment that's a little warmer, but I know that they were very appreciative of us making that investment to address that, because of, and it's right, it is considered by a number as a meeting point and a hub for a range of different reasons. And through COVID particularly, I was really impressed with how you and your team performed in that space and made sure that books were accessible. In fact, I went in there on the Sunday and books were flying out the door. We weren't really sure if they were going to come back, but I think they have. But that's just the way in which our libraries support. But look, we do need to look at the broader picture. I think coupling the two is still important, and we can consider that as we go forward. And if we change our mind, there's our LTP at the very least is going to be considered within 3 years, further 3 years time, because it's always considered every 3 years. And with what's in the picture at the moment, we may well be considering that sooner. And let's just see where that goes. But I think it is very important, as I mentioned before, that we do present to our community a responsible and prudent position, noting that, look, I'd like to do more, but we're just not in that position at the moment. But please don't take that as a view that our council doesn't value our library, because we do. Thank you.
Question, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible to take point I and point 2 separately? This procedural question, please. Or can they be removed into a B and a C, perhaps? Or the,
I'll take A so that we receive the report. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. We'll take B1. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, declare that carried. And then B2. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, I declare that carried. Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Can I just, so we just now come to 412. So if we just go back into your diligent, and it's back in the main reports. So just give members a minute or two to connect back in. Has everyone got it up? Oh, page 308, tab 14. It's not in the white pages, it's in diligent on your computer, Joan. Sorry, it's diligent, page 308, tab 14. So tab 14, so you need to go back into the main. You got it? Has everyone got it now? I'm not hearing otherwise, so Paula, your report please. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Happy New Year. So libraries are seeking approval for the recommendations in the report. If I can just refresh everybody, we were talking about renewal of the library kiosks, the machines that enable our community to self-issue the items they are borrowing, with a $110,000 price tag for the full replacement of the network-wide kiosks. That's 7 machines and 3 sites. C was reducing or waiving fines for our young people. So currently, young people in the district, at the age of 16, they become an adult. The proposal is for young people to be considered until their 18th birthday, and no fines for anybody. So the report I spoke to in December stated that we currently had just over 1,000 under 18-year-olds with debt starting at $4 and above who were not able to use any library services, including online databases, which I'd like to add, has huge implications in a lockdown when schools were directing students to use their local libraries' electronic resources through the EPIC consortia, which we're part of, and a block on their library card means that they can't do that. In response to Councillor Redmond's question yesterday about other libraries, Public Library New Zealand Network responded very rapidly to my question, asking what age group other districts categorise young adults, and with exception of Ashburton, who charge children from 16 but regard them as a young adult until their 18th birthday, to date, from the data that I've had back, we are the only library charging our young people and categorising them an adult at 16. Point C was for the provision of new shelving. So stage 1, council granted that money last year in the annual plan. Stage 2 will be funded from our fee waiver from the NZLPP. So approximately 40,000 of that will be covered by central government. And we're asking for stage 3, the final stage of the shelving replacement at Rangiora, which is approximately $35,000 from the quotes I received last year from 2 vendors. These shelves will be predominantly on, one significant portion will be on casters to enable us to create those spaces that we don't currently have for community gatherings, for workshops, for lectures, for presentations, for concerts, for events, and make it easy for more staff than are currently physically able to move the existing shelving back. At the moment, we do have an older workforce at Rangiora, and at times it is very limiting who can physically move the shelving. Point E is just reiterating that the shelving replacement phase 3 would be covered by the NZLPP, the New Zealand Libraries Partnership funding, the 58 million that central government gave New Zealand libraries last year. Point F is for smart shelving, so that as a refresher, that's the shelving where you pop your library item on it. It's RFID enabled and it's automatically taken off your library account. The benefit of this shelving means we basically don't need the existing real estate that's used as a returns room, and that can be repurposed into a community and council-wide meeting and learning space. Quite easily in conversation with several builders while the HVAC system was being installed. I took the opportunity to use the in-house expertise, and then we actually brought in one of the council contractors and checked a few things with him. So point G refers to the $20,000 estimated to modify the existing returns room if the smart shelves are granted, freeing up that space for the meeting room that I've talked about. The cost for this would be covered in this current year's NZLPP fee waiver, so central government would be funding the creation of that space. I'd like to just point out that I've carefully considered that every request is transferable into a new space, extension or library whenever that happens. And even down to the glass walls and doors that would be needed to frame up the new room would be relocatable should a space that size be able to be repurposed in an extension in the future. It's been really important to me that waimakariri demonstrate that the value we get from the New Zealand Libraries Partnership money is in line with what the Minister and National Library have envisaged. I am very connected to that working group, so it's important to me personally and professionally. And in conversations, we are making sure that we are demonstrating the role of libraries in this community for existing library users, but also those who don't see themselves in the library at the moment. And for us to create space through mobile shelving or through a space, a meeting room, and target those people who we don't currently serve. We have a hugely loyal following, but we also have people that don't use the library for different reasons, for their stories, for their sense of belonging. And we know that in a COVID environment, the opportunity to learn, to upskill, to connect, the community hub message is coming through so strongly here, and I really celebrate you all for that. That's a lot more than I hear from a lot of my colleagues who talk to councils. The community commons and community hub idea is very much where we're at, and I think that using the NZLPP unexpected windfall that we've got for the next 2 years in conjunction with the 3 staff, we're going to be able to serve more of our community, those that love us for our printed material and those that need us to connect, to learn, to engage, and just for well-being.
Right.
I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Questions? So we've got a recommendation. Is someone prepared to move? Councillor Ward, seconded by Councillor Blackie. Councillor Ward.
Paula, yes, I would thoroughly recommend everything we need to do there to assist you, to keep you going, and it's a wonderful community facility. The library, and you do a great job, and the team are great, and everyone, all the oldies that come voluntarily, they're super too, so it's a great community effort. And look forward to working closely with you in the near future to extend your library.
Councillor Blackie.
Yes, thank you, Paula. Yes, thoroughly recommend all your suggestions in this budget. The shelves and the smart shelves are a no-brainer. I mean, yeah, obviously. Removing the youth fines, great idea. Moving into the modern world, I think it's as you've pointed out, it's a major disincentive to get our youth engaged. So good on you for bringing that in too. The self-service kiosks, they have to be done. I'm not actually in favour of those. I worry that a place like a library, which is a community hub where human interaction is very, very important. Every time you put a machine in, you're losing a little bit of human contact, but that horse is bolted. The kiosk you've got to stuffed, so you've got to put new ones in. So all in all, a good, prudent budget. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, followed by Councillor Mealings.
Yeah. I actually think we've got one of the best libraries in the whole community areas and supporting actually, it's really good. You've answered my question. One of my biggest ones was, will our shelving like be utilised when we do the extensions? And so that is really good. So just giving my support to, and the feedback I'm getting back from ratepayers are, we've got a good library and we need to keep it good, and so yeah, real good. Thank you.
John, you had a question?
Paula, you said we've got about 1,000 under 18 currently with fines, and this deals with from 1 July onwards. What would your view be if we were to, what would be the impact or consequence of council remitting the fines of those who currently are on our books, and what would be your thought about it?
It's a great question. So Selwyn, Upper Hutt have recently had approval to wipe fines for all their users, and based on a welcome back campaign, particularly at Selwyn, existing debt was waived, and membership growth, new membership has been phenomenal. Engagement with traditionally non-library users, people who might have had a debt when they were, say, 17, 18, and then the scale of the campaign through Facebook and social media and the website and customer facing has brought people back, and the community engagement. So impact, there would obviously be, you could look at it as money not gathered, but actually most of the time you're never going to get it anyway. Statistically, what does happen is you get a lot of lost books back, because people don't have the shame. So libraries often run an amnesty, and when amnesties run, you get books back. You know, you exchange fine for cans of food for a charitable purpose. That sort of thing is quite common. Some research that came out of San Francisco, when they waived their fines and did a complete amnesty, they got books back that had been 25 years overdue. So, you know, phenomenal amount of stock back because there was no shame, there was no debt. So win-win-win.
Councillor Measures?
I'd like to move an amendment.
Okay.
I would like to move A through G and also add an H, which would remove all current fines, and perhaps...
perhaps it might be just simpler to amend C, which would be, rather than, are you talking about all fines in general, or just as
current fines that are standing right now, and commence an amnesty program as per what Paula just said.
Well, do you want to amend it into the main? Or no?
Can I suggest you get a little bit of guidance from Paula about how to frame this, because there is a difference between all fines and all fines for people who are under 18, which is significantly different.
Please, I'm in your hands.
And if we were minded to, how do you think we should structure that to be most effective from your perspective?
Thanks. So can I just ask a couple of questions? Are you seeing this as 0 to 8, the 18th first, the 0 to 18th birthday, or are you seeing this for all people of all ages?
What would be the greatest benefit to our community in your eyes?
If I'm speaking honestly, fine-free, debt-free fee waiver of every single person in the district, starting with a blank canvas, and a huge welcome back campaign, and a come and we're here to support you because we don't know your story, but let us help you with it.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
We would make headlines.
Look, just sitting in the
Can we just confine this to questions first, and then we'll make sure that we've got it framed correctly. Yep. Did you have a further question, Nikki? Because I'll come back to you in a second.
So I think if we framed it as that, but going forward, be fine free for under 18, but retain adult. Retain adult fines going forward.
Yeah.
Because we do need to have a disincentive for people to just walk out the door with our books and never come back.
So you're just hold on. Yeah. Okay. Can we just talk? Do you have a question, Councillor Williams? Yes.
What sort of dollar value would we be talking?
Okay, so based on the last full non-COVID year, because bearing in mind there was no fines for about 6 weeks after we came out of lockdown because of the National Library Consortia project, we were talking approximately 5,000 for children, and district-wide, that's debt that we gathered in the last non-COVID year for 16 years and under, and across all demographics, approximately $20,000 all up was gathered, and that's the data that I had from APNK. It doesn't match with what Finance have said. They think we bring in less in fines, so there is a little discrepancy. I just wanted to declare that honestly, that there's those two areas. I would suggest that it is a waiver of fines, and but lost items are still lost items, that we're not giving a blank canvas for you to keep your books. If you've kept your book and not brought it back, that's fine. Bring it back and there is no fine, no penalty. You reuse your library card. But if that book is lost and you're not able to find it, we personally, and from other libraries that have done it, I think we should still, if you've lost the book, it's your personal responsibility. If you've got your book and you know you can bring it back, there's no charge.
Councillor. Yeah.
And the second question is, if this was brought in, would it encourage people to keep their books longer and not worry about any fine system?
Statistically, it doesn't happen. It's quite a political conversation, as you can imagine. And the research from overseas in particular, who have, in the States, they've been leading the way with this, and Sydney and Tasmania, it doesn't, none of the data shows that people do that. It's an opportunity to engage in the conversation about, you can renew your library item, give us a ring, let us set up the app on your phone, you can do it online. It's a re-education, reconnecting, more of a, we're here to work with you, but we don't want to work against you. And it's an amazing opportunity to engage with your community in different ways. I've discussed with the library's leadership team that should we get any of this through, that we would be front-facing in the community. We will be at events, we'll be at supermarkets, we'll have flyers on cars, we will be shouting it from the rooftops that this is what we're doing, and encouraging a welcome back campaign. The Libraries and Arts Manager from Selwyn and Apaha are fully supportive of sharing what they have done with me, because our three library districts have been granted some of the most rewards from the NZLPP, and we're working together strongly.
Councillor Bryan, followed by Councillor Atkinson. No.
Bearing in mind
you got a question?
This is a draft for consultation.
Isn't you?
Between now and submissions, would you be able to supply a policy paper articulating what you're trying to verbalise at the moment?
Absolutely.
And that would include, obviously, what this potentially could cost, and your marketing campaign, and what that might cost.
No problem.
So just coming back, so you're moving an amendment, which is effectively a new age. Can you just reframe what that said?
That we withdraw fines which are currently standing on under 18s and commence an amnesty program for outstanding adult fines at this point. Let me just see. I feel like we need to probably have something in place.
Do you want
so I just want an amnesty for up to this point for adults, and then that we have a report.
Then request a report. Yes.
Going forward, what the implications.
Okay, so that's so. Can we just make sure we're clear? So H, what have you got reported there?
Can I suggest a way forward too? Because I think Councillor Bryan raises some reasonable points. I'm just waiting to some Paula with me, and I wonder, Chris and Paula, whether for the March council meeting whether this meeting could request a report to, whether that's feasible in your timeline.
Absolutely.
A report to the March council meeting that addresses the issue of remission. Now you can deal with remissions outside of the annual plan process. So if you wanted to start a remission campaign, my thinking is if you wanted to start a remission and amnesty campaign before the adoption of the LTP process, then you can, that is not necessarily a matter for annual LTP per se for debt, other than the decision you've made about 18-year-olds onwards, and you might want, the council might want to give effect to that early, but if it did that at its March meeting, you could get a report that sort of shaped up what you'd like to do and how best to give effect to, I think, the sentiment that sits with Councillor Mealings. And so the motion today, or the amendment today, would be request a report for the March meeting on library fine remission. How does that sound?
Are you happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy with that.
So you're moving
I'm moving that.
Request a report.
What he said.
Request a report on library fine remissions to the March council meeting, to come to the March council meeting. Seconded, but so it's a new H, and that's seconded by Councillor Barnett. Councillor Mealings. Yes.
I just want to make sure that that report also includes the cost of the campaign.
Yeah, I think it would be a comprehensive, a report that covers all aspects of how that would be rolled out.
If I can just share, the cost of the campaign will mainly be people. The NZLPP community coordinator role will be largely at the centre of this. So thanks central government, and social media, the power of it is already rostered within current capacity.
So would we still need? Anyway.
I think these are mostly sunk costs anyway, so the bad debt's written off.
Just we'll be there in 1 second.
So the consultation it is still proposing no fines. Now, it may be that libraries from March get some ability to waive prior to that, but the budget is still, just to be clear, the budget from 1 July will provide for fines for those 18 and over, and will be asking for, and they still remain, but for 18 and under there will be no fines. So that's the budget position. What you do with the debt and the amnesty would be, which is the current debt and amnesty, is a matter for March. Now there's a little bit that your report will need to traverse, is what do we do between, what's the best thing to do between March and July for those who are under 18, and I can imagine what we might think was the right way to deal with that.
Okay, so speaking to the amendment, Councillor Mealings.
So Paula, you have many times told us, and again today, what the effect is on that debt on young people and people in general. We've seen how important our community spaces are, particularly libraries during COVID, at-home learning, or finding new jobs, etc. Our libraries are community hubs, and they are probably one of the very few free bastions where people can actually get together and just be, and not be expected to spend money or do something or move along in a certain amount of time. Just recently at the GC 2050 workshops, there was a lot of talk about how people need, and particularly youth, but people just need a space where they can get together, meet, be, and not be expected, right, your coffee's gone, can you please free up that table and pay your bill, be gone. We need those places, and our libraries do that. With regards to the improvements that you're proposing for the kiosks and the shelving, I think that's very, very clever. The research that you put into that, the fact that these are going to be transferable to the new facility, they'll make the job easier for now, and they're also going to make more space in our very, very full facilities at this point. So I commend you on your clever research on those products, and I'm very happy to support that as well. But you know, the library is a central part of our community, and you do a fine job in looking after our people for us, and I'd like to make sure that you can continue to do that into the future, even though we cannot give you the top of our wish list, which is a new facility. In the meantime, I think this is an excellent stopgap.
Councillor Bartlett?
Just speaking to the amendment about amnesty, my children have lost books. I've searched the house, I've turned them upside down, and I cannot find them. And there's a shame associated with that. You go in, you feel really embarrassed because you're responsible for that book. You took it out on good faith, and then you've lost the book. And luckily, I've been in a position I can make good, but a lot of people aren't. And it's really, really difficult when the budgets are really, really tight. The other thing that we've got to remember is that if an adult has a fine, they won't take their children. So therefore, you're actually affecting the lives of young people as well. So this is a chance for a fresh start. It's a chance to reconnect with some people whose lives may have changed in the interim, but may have something historic that's holding them back from reintegrating with our community and reintegrating their family with our community. So I certainly think this would be a really good move. It's an excellent move to show that we care about our community, that we understand how hard these times have been with economic activity decreasing, and I think the timing is right. So I applaud Councillor Mealings for putting this in. I applaud the library staff and Paula for looking after our community, and I think this is a really good move to look at and a wipe, but still then educating those people that they need to be responsible going forward.
Okay, Councillor Redmond? So speaking to the amendment.
Correct, Mr Mayor. I would like to, well, I'm in support of your amendment, wherever the amendment ended up. In that report, I'd like to see it fairly comprehensive, and possibly we be given a number of options, such as, are we waiving historical fines for under 18s and or all users, including adults, of course. Whether we look at a fine amnesty for all users, both children and adult, whether we abolish fines for all users, that's children and adults. There are a number of options, and I must admit, Paula, your passion for the topic has persuaded me slightly that I'm more sympathetic to remitting fines for all users than I was when I came into this meeting. I also ask, and you've addressed it in your report, I think, about the definition of a child, if you like. There was a discrepancy between 19 and under and 18 and under. So I think we've now defined that. So when you come up with your report, if this amendment is passed, I would like to see a number of various options. It's not just one blanket option, but I think there could be a number of choices that we could be presented with. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also going to support the amendment. If it had been as it was in the early framing, probably wouldn't have, in the sense because I would have liked to have seen a report on it. So I think seeing a report on it with the various options, I think, is important, because it, there is financial consequences and also the message that sends. But I watched through as I highlighted before in the discussion, through the COVID situation, there were books literally flying out the door. We had no idea where they were going, really, and from what you've advised, vast majority are back. So there is an honesty system within our community, and I'd like to explore that. I think it's worth exploring. So, like Councillor Barnett, I do applaud the Councillor Mealings on requesting that, and I look forward to the report coming with interest. But I'm more persuaded than like Councillor Redmond, probably a little more persuaded than I was earlier after listening to what you had to say and from what I observed myself. But I would like to look at the broader consequences of that before making a final decision. But we've So anyway, any further speakers? Okay, I'll come back to the original motion. So I'll put the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Declare that carried. So the amendment now forms part of the original motion. So we're back to... Oh, I'm sorry, Kate. Well, we'll find out now. Yeah, so H comes as part of the recommendation, so the amendment is now passed. So H forms part of the original recommendation. So now back to the original recommendation. Is there any further speakers? Councillor Doody.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you once again for your report. It's excellent. And I'm very pleased that we're going to move forward with this waiving these fines. I think they're excellent. And actually a waived fine is not lost money because you never had it. So I think but a lost item is entirely different. So I think we're moving in the right direction there too. And I also like to congratulate you on your forward thinking for things you can do in the library that can be used again when we have the opportunity to rebuild. And I really appreciate everything that you and your staff have been doing. Thank you.
Okay. Any further speakers to the original to the motion now? Yep. Recommendation.
Yes, absolutely, 100% in support of all the provisions in the motion. They will go some way to helping improve the functionality of the library. I'm excited about the new space. I didn't know about that, so that was great. When I just wanted to clarify that when I said the library is a dog, I meant the building. People say how wonderful our library is because of the people. You know, they could be in a tin shed and they'd still say it's a wonderful library because we've got the most fabulous staff. But there are soundproofing issues. I mean, yesterday there was babies crying, there were teenagers. It was really hard to try and read my council agenda. You know, there wasn't enough separated spaces between youth and adults, and there weren't quiet spaces anywhere because it's full, and it's because it's being used so much. Sometimes I can't get a desk. So, you know, it's really, really a critical part of our infrastructure, and it's why it's really, really important that we make the best use of it that we can. So thoroughly support this recommendation.
Any further speakers? Councillor Ward, would you like to exercise a right of reply?
Fine, I think we're all in agreement. Let's get on with it. Thank you.
I'll now put that forward. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Declare that carried. Thank you, Paula. I think that we are due for more, but I think we might just deal with the white pages while we're here. Well, we'll see whether that takes time. So page 400, Paula, you'll need to remain for these are your budget papers. Yep. So page 420, apart from what you've already highlighted, are there any other points that you'd like to draw to our attention? Seems that I think most things have been covered. There are some items there around additional expenditure.
So the additional items that were identified are in relation to just taking a good look at our existing costs, our existing budget, and then real costs, and in particular newspapers and magazines. And Mr. Mayor, we've both experienced recently community not being happy. Postage is currently for regional newspapers 3 times the cost of the physical newspaper, and despite extensive exploration of different options, we're stuck with it. We are doing our best to push the community to digital, but the demographic loving the paper, we've got to respect that too. So that accounts for the additional expenditure for newspapers and magazines. With the dissolving of many New Zealand newspapers at the beginning of COVID, I did think that we wouldn't need this, but the New Zealand journalism and magazine industry is alive and well, and new titles that are really pertinent and relevant to New Zealand and the regions are popping up all over the place. So we are replacing titles that were wiped when the big overseas conglomerates took us down. the circulation costs is never, in my time and 2 years before I started, been a review of the maintenance costs with the vendor who provides the kiosks that accounts for that additional money. I would like to say I may be able to negotiate that out with the new tender, and I'll do my best to not need that. The blinds at Rui Taniwha are really to maximise the use of the downstairs area facing onto the quay. It's obviously northwest facing, high sunlight, and it does actually reduce the amount of use for that space. We've got all of that shelving on casters and are using it for a public meeting, performance, book launch, baby times, trying to bring our events downstairs instead of having them locked away upstairs. But during many of the summer months, it's just impossible because the sunlight is too much. So that was from the team leader at Rui Taniwha, Laura, which I fully support if it could get through. And that was really it. We had more on there, but we've just tried to be really prudent with making the use of our existing spaces better. We have looked at staffing and getting staff to do more and change the way they work. We were really aware that we didn't want to ask for anything that we didn't need this time.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Questions? I've got Councillor Williams followed by Councillor Blackie.
2 questions. First one's a wee bit tongue-in-cheek. I presume that's 36,000 for newspaper, not 36 million. All the other ones are the same scenario.
Paula's always ambitious.
Hope that would get through.
No. Yeah, so page 429, up at the top when you've got circulation income, when you're so busy, like you've been saying, why is there basically a 10% reduction in the long-term budget? 66,000 down to 60,000.
My understanding of that is the impact of the fines that weren't gathered during COVID. No, that's not.
It's continuing up all the way through, you see.
That would reflect what your youth fine component is possibly.
Correct. That's right, thank you. Yes, a reduction in income, making the assumption that the request for fine-free went through. Circulation income is derived from bestsellers, from DVDs, CDs, any item that you pay for, as well as fines, reserve charges. So at the moment we just have a one-size-fits-all. Everything is lumped together.
Councillor Blackie.
Question for Chris. The blinds at Rua Taniwha have the architect Warren and Marnie, wasn't it? Have they been asked to comment on their design inadequacies involving this overheating problem?
No. No, they haven't. It's something which we definitely need to be more mindful of in the way we build buildings in the future, because I know that we've retrofitted blinds to the Kaipoi Aquatic Centre, and we're looking at doing the same here. They do have the big veranda out the front, but at certain times of the day the light just still gets in, and it's really difficult to use the space. So they are needed to help us use the space more. And it's something that with the indoor courts we've been pushing them on quite hard as well, where they've got their computer models which say that the sun won't get in and it won't be an issue. We've been saying, look, our experience is that blinds would still be better, or stickers on the windows, or whatever they're doing there, so it won't be a problem with the new building either.
Okay, further questions? Councillor Doody.
Chris, when the Oxford one, I noticed you've got blinds on them on the east side. Is that an afterthought as well, or was that done? I can't remember if that was done straight away.
I think that was done straight away.
Right.
However, even though we've got blinds there, we're also now planting trees on that north side of the building in Oxford because the likes of the staff room just get so ridiculously hot.
Yes.
I think we just need to turn the temperature in Oxford down a few degrees in summer would help considerably.
Yeah, thank you. But those blinds are very effective.
Okay, thank you. So there's no further questions. Well, there's no amendment because we've to this. So unless anyone's proposing one, we've moved a pro forma motion at the start which approved all the budgets. So is there any general? I think we've all had a fairly good reflection on libraries. So look, Paula, thank you, and thank you to all of you, to all of your team for what they do, and I think that's marked by the comments that have been reflected to you today. So that's the library's budget. So we're going to break for morning tea now, and so we're back at 5 to 11. And the next budget that we'll be talking about is Aquatic Facilities. So Matt and his team are up for it after.